In 2023, I got laid off. And from there, honestly, I built a completely different career. Let's talk about it. So, even though I have almost 20 years of professional creative experience, I actually found myself asking a question that I thought I would have figured out by my early 40s. And that question is, what am I supposed to do now? If you're new to this channel and you don't know, I have also been a graphic designer, an illustrator, an art director, a college instructor, and spent 5 years as a creative recruiter, and also used to freelance as a web designer. And for most of you who have followed my journey, you also know that I've built my creative business on the side, the Gypsy Goddess. So on paper, I felt like I had done a lot, but instead of feeling accomplished, felt like my career had become a collection of different jobs and creative experiments that didn't necessarily add up to one clear direction. So after I was laid off in mid 2023, I returned to freelance as a designer. And so I took on a bunch of creative work to pay the bills. And technically, I knew how to freelance. I had been doing creative work for so many years, but I also knew that the lifestyle could feel like when the work wasn't coming in consistently. And from what I've experienced 10 years ago, I was on the road to burnout basically. And earlier in my career, I had gone from one short-term contract to another while I lived in LA. And so there were times when I stayed with family because I didn't have a stable place of my own. And I remember coming back to San Diego and driving to LA back and forth and sleeping on my grandparents' couch in between jobs. And that was honestly one of the hardest and most unstable periods of my life. I was in my early 30s. I had just moved back from New York. I was living in New York and moved back at the end of 2013. So when I found myself freelancing again in my early 40s, I realized that I didn't want to build my life around that kind of uncertainty anymore. I just didn't want to do it. It's a recipe for burnout. I still wanted to be creative, but I also was craving that stability. And one of the things I wanted was to work remotely, and I wanted better income potential. And I wanted a career that I could grow with instead of constantly making me feel like I had to chase the next project. And quite honestly, the problem was that I had no desire to throw away everything I had already learned and to start over from the very beginning. To me, that was like the hardest thing for me to get over, because at that time I was trying to build more of the Gypsy Goddess and I just didn't see it as a sustainable path. And honestly, that's when I started looking more seriously at Salesforce, because I thought it would be a more viable career path. And Salesforce wasn't completely unfamiliar to me. I had actually freelanced years earlier and worked directly at Salesforce as an art director and illustrator for Trailhead, which is Salesforce's online learning platform. So while there, I helped create illustrations and visual systems that made technical information feel more approachable and engaging. We worked on the Trailhead modules. And at the time, I was working on the creative side of the company, and I wasn't configuring the Salesforce CRM platform. I wasn't a Salesforce admin. I wasn't any of this. I didn't understand how many different careers existed within the Salesforce ecosystem. So years later, I started realizing that Salesforce wasn't only for developers or highly technical people. Companies also needed researchers, strategists, designers, and people who could actually understand complicated systems and make them easier to use. And that's what I love. That was the connection I had been looking for. I love taking complex systems and making it easier for the user. So I didn't have to honestly stop being a designer. I could combine my design experience with specialized knowledge on a platform such as Salesforce that businesses and government organizations were already using. So in December of 2023, I started seriously studying Salesforce on Trailhead. So I researched the different roles, I explore the different certification paths, and I try to understand where someone with my particular background would actually fit. And I eventually discovered the Salesforce UX Designer certification, and that was the bridge that I needed. Ding, ding, ding in my mind. It connected to something I already understood, user experience, visual design, with something I needed to learn, which is the Salesforce platform and terminology and design system. So I studied for several months and eventually earned my Salesforce UX Designer certification in April of 2024. But I wanted to be very clear about something. The certification did not magically land me a job. And I also didn't think or know for sure if getting the certification would land me or guarantee a job. But it did give me a framework. It gave me new terminology, and it gave employers evidence that I had taken the time to actually understand the platform. But honestly, the real value came from connecting that certification to everything that I had already done in the past. And I had years of visual design experience and UX design experience working for different companies in the past. So I understood how to simplify complicated information. I had designed consumer websites and digital products. I had worked at Salesforce before, so everything was pretty familiar to me. But I had also taught design, which meant I knew how to explain ideas clearly. I had worked as a recruiter for 5 years, so I understood how employers actually evaluate candidates. And so I felt like that gave me a little bit of an upper hand. But also, freelancing had taught me how to step into unfamiliar environments and figuring things out quickly. So if you freelanced before, then you know what I'm talking about. So none of those experiences that I had were ever really wasted. I simply just had to learn how to tell a new story about them. And quite honestly, instead of presenting myself as someone in their early 40s trying to enter an entirely new field, I positioned myself as an experienced designer, adding Salesforce specialization to an existing career. So that distinction made a huge difference. So in August of 2024, about 4 months after earning my certification, I landed my first Salesforce focused UX role. I started working on enterprise systems involving legal case management systems. And yeah, wow, it just opened my mind up. From there, I moved into work that supported the Department of Veteran Affairs and the public API platform. I later also worked on a Salesforce modernization project with a smaller government consulting agency, and we were working on a prototype for the United States Air Force. And today I work as a senior experience architect on another large government modernization project and subcontracting directly at Salesforce. So that is very different from where I thought my career would go when I first became a graphic designer. So but the difference, honestly, is that I no longer feel as if I have to make every creative interest immediately support me financially. And that was a problem. I was like veering off into so many different directions. I was exploring pattern licensing. I was doing some design work for Shein. And so Now I feel like my professional work gives me a little bit of that stability, and it gives me the freedom to actually create again and to create after hours or on the weekends. And that balance is something I actually tried spending a lot of years trying to figure out. So if you've been laid off and if you're over 40 or not, maybe you're in your 20s still trying to figure out, or if your career feels scattered, or if you're wondering whether it's too late to change directions, I don't think it's too late. You could be at any age. And I want you to know that your experience is not wasted. You are not necessarily starting from zero. So you may simply need to just identify the right intersection between what you already know and what you're willing to learn and what people currently need. So that was the biggest shift for me. And this channel is going to explore that intersection. I know I have tried speaking on so many different topics and primarily in the past about Photoshop tutorials, but we're going to talk about creative career reinvention, turning your existing abilities into income and building a personal brand and using technology, including AI, to create more sustainably. And in my next couple of videos, you're going to get introduced to Digital Diane, my AI avatar. I know it's overkill, but it's going to help me on the back end because I'm still working at my day job. And I just believe that this is going to help me with creating more time. And honestly, I got inspired by Julia McCoy's channel. Check her out. She talks about how to create your own digital avatar or twin. So subscribe. If you're trying to build a creative life that is both meaningful and financially sustainable and intentional, I would love for you to subscribe and follow along this journey. And hopefully, my journey inspires you too. And have you ever had to reinvent your career, or is there a skill that you already have that you're struggling to turn into an opportunity? So your answer may become a topic in a future video. If you have comments or feedback or ideas on what you want to see next or what I can talk about, drop it in the comments below and give me some feedback. I'd love to hear what you guys think. So I'll see you in my next video, and I'm so glad you're here. Bye, guys.